Good morning. We are ready for our first expert talk about our focus topic. We are talking about textile to textile, sorters and recyclers, and how we can help them move forward. We have our three special guests, Andreas Donner from ReUp, we have Evan Wiener from Rehubs, and Gianluca Pandolfo from Reju. Thank you for joining us. So, textile to textiles. We've been talking about it for a while, both here and in the industry. It's a buzzword. It's something that everybody's looking forward to or looking at or wondering where it's coming from. It's going backwards and forwards in terms of regulation, at least at the EU level. Brands are wondering what to do. And that puts everybody in a bit of a waiting position. We're waiting for the regulation. Are we waiting for new materials? Are we waiting for the brands to push this forward? And this is kind of what we're looking at. We're going to try and see how we can actually move this forward and support sorters, recyclers, collectors, because as we have said today, the feedstock is an important part of this discussion, but it is a circle, so everyone is important. So we need this focus, and we need to understand not only why recyclers and these companies are going bankrupt, even though they have orders, people are excited about the materials, these things are still happening. So we want to look at this and try and take this forward into how can we help the industry, how can we support sorters, collectors, recyclers. And for this, I've brought together this panel of experts, people that know more about this than I do. We have Gianluca, Evan, and Andreas. Andreas, you start with an A. Would you like to introduce yourself and your role, please?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Andreas Dorner. I'm the managing director of ReUp. And in ReUp, what we do is very short. We have already at scale, we have a factory with 80,000 tons, 50,000 tons cotton, 30,000 tons polyester, textile to textile. Our focus is post-consumer waste. We are already working at scale. Our production is in Turkey. The office is in Eindhoven, Netherlands. And yes, that's it. So we started already. It's working in a very good direction. And I'm very happy to be here with this wonderful panel and discuss further.
Thank you. Evan?
Great. Well, it's also suiting that all of our organizations start with R or RE. So my name's Evan Wiener. I'm a board advisor to Rehubs. Rehubs is a mission-driven organization based in Europe, focused on building the infrastructure to collect, sort, and recycle 2.5 million tons of textile waste in Europe by 2032. And we'll go into some of the key initiatives and what we're working on, but start with there as an introduction.
Thank you. And last but not least, Gianluca.
Hello everyone. I'm working for Reju, that's another R. And Reju is a French company that is focusing on regenerating polyester from post-consumer waste. And we do it in Europe. We take feedstock from Europe, we regenerate in Europe, and we do also the same in the US. So we are working to create two circular ecosystems, or supporting the creation of two circular ecosystems in Europe and the US.
That's a very interesting point. We're talking about geographies, and we'll go into that a bit later. My first question to all of you is, and we were talking about this just before with Andreas, what does it take, or what will it take to make this work, to bend this line into a circle? You said you were talking to legislators. What is their position, or what is your position on how we can support them?
Yeah. Well, I think as we unpack, in the whole circularity, there are different things. So it's the feedstock, it's the demand, the process. I think all three technologies, the two technologies, and the support of Rehubs is there to make it happen. On the legislation, I just come from Brussels. I need to show you. EU textiles are here. So the EU textiles, I'm not policymaker, but the policymakers have a very important role. They are enablers of this process. And being there in Brussels, I go to Brussels again tonight. The policymakers are very interested to understand what does it mean. And they want to talk to companies who are doing it. Because there's so much written and theories and studies, I think thousands of studies. They want to have really a voice what's going on. And therefore, few companies join together in different groups, like we have Rehubs, we have the T2T Alliance, and Gianluca is also. We want to force together to get them really the understanding what it needs. Enabling means if the European Union stays to the ESPR and EPR, we will have a real impact because there's a minimum percentage of recycled content, which helps the whole industry to move forward. Otherwise, let's say just the downside, if we don't do that, we have, let's say, textile to textile imported goods from China or Asia, and the whole European industry is destroyed. And I think that's very important, the message. So get the policymakers on the way. We find ways that, especially to keep our passion, clean up Europe. It's the first goal, clean up Europe. Then we talk about the rest. But to do that, the policymakers are too far away. And they need voices from REJU, from Rehubs, from T2T Alliance members, that they have a full picture. And I think that's the way why we founded this association. But it's not about our association. It's the whole stream needs to go in this way. And I think it's very nice that they open their conversations to talk to the industry people about the enabling factor. They cannot drive it. But initiatives, what we have here, they need just the support and say, let's go through. Worst case is we have again an omnibus. If we have an omnibus, a lot of things will go down. And for those who don't know, omnibus is like, again, postponing. And I think Europe has now developed in the whole world a unique opportunity for textile to textile recycling, having a minimum wages there, have an eco-design. And this enables Europe to become a clean area, and we have a massive textile waste, which the technologies here can transform. I hope this answers the question a little bit longer as expected. Sorry, I will be shorter the next time.
No, this is great. And I want to take this opportunity not to call everybody out, but to call you in, everybody here as customers, suppliers, brands, people buying these textiles and looking at sourcing. Please make your voice heard, reach out to policymakers and be part of the discussion. This is a collaborating effort and we can't do it on our own. We need all of you to participate. And in this participation,
if I can add, I'm an outsider here because I spent more than 20 years of my career with consumer brands. So on the other side, I think I completely agree with you, Andreas. I think that the tipping point is start thinking that circularity is a conversation that is happening between a bunch of people sitting here and a bunch of sustainability teams sitting in the brands and trying to do something nice or achieving some goals for the sustainability report. That's not the case anymore since few years. So we are real. We are here. It's not only REANUP and REJU. There are many others. We have technology that is ready. We have resources in place. We have investment in place to scale up. Because that is more a strategic initiative for Europe. It's not just something that a couple of people wants to do. And that's the way we should switch. And is it easy to do? Of course not. We need investments. We need eco-modulated schemes. We need financial tools that are going to support the new industries coming. So it's not easy. But this is a great opportunity for everyone, brand included.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned the word investments and return on investments several times. I'm going to turn to Evan on this one. Can you help us with this? Give us an idea of the cost of these transitions. Are there gaps? Can we unpack the economics of this?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I got my cheat sheet here, so unfortunately I'm not as smart as I'd like to be in memorizing all these numbers, but a couple key things. So Rehubs as an organization is pushing to create one version of the truth for the industry, starting with Europe. So aligning on where we are today in terms of volumes, capacities, and then also very much on the economic side. What is it going to take to get there? So just to put this in context, and this is a report that Rehubs will be launching next week, so keep an eye out for it. But the overall framing is, again, through the lens of Europe. If we want to create the T2T infrastructure so it can really become scalable, we need to build the infrastructure to be able to collect, process, and recycle 2.7 million tons of textile waste. That number is really important for everyone to know, because the economics show that would be about 15%, and we've seen in other comparable materials or value chains that are working on recycling, that is more or less a tipping point where the economics start to play out. So that's really important, I would say, just grounding of the 2.5 to 2.7 million tons, and that being about 15% of the waste problem that we believe at Rehubs will reach the tipping point. In terms of what that means financially, and this is where the policies matter, but really advocating for both public and private investment, because we're talking to reach that 15%, 8 to 10 billion euros of capex by 2032. And we're also then talking about an additional 5 to 6.5 billion euros in opex within that same time frame. EPRs won't get us there alone. And then when we talk about the solutions, we can talk about some of the things that I think we all believe. But I think just looking at the numbers and the math and the true capex opex cost of this transition, it's no small feat. This, by the way, is I'm just talking about these numbers for Europe, not globally. So maybe I'll pause there. We can talk about some other numbers, but at least those are the some that I think are most important for us as an industry to really align behind.
Thank you. And so 15 billion, if I sum those two, capex and opex, where are we going to get those? Do you have any ideas or suggestions? Andreas, when you're looking at that, how do you look at that? And Gianluca?
Well, I think again here, if we get to this, I think money today is not the problem. Because if we have a legal frame on the EPR and ESPR, it's not that the money is going there. The EU is not very rich, but the investment arms of a lot of banks, private equity, they're waiting for security. I mean, in today's world where everything is unsecure, I think if we see that ESPR and EPR gets in place, then a lot of green investment funds, I think they're there and said, okay, let me help. Where can I support? And companies like we have Regio, we have Rehab, we have Circularity, others, Recover, they're all there, so they can expand. But it's the chicken and egg. As long there's no security, the investment community is reluctant, because if it's not coming, it's the wrong direction. But I would say we could materialize. I don't say the full number, but there's a high interest on the investment, the Green Transition Fund, and we talk here about the EU Green Deal, which has a budget of 2,700 billion in Europe. There is money dedicated, but it's coming from the private sector. Also, World Bank and others. So I think if we get the signal, it goes in the right direction. It needs a collaboration between the stakeholders, companies, partners, investment communities to get there. And we need to be clear, it will not come from today to the next, but let's make this green transition in Europe the next 10 years, which creates green jobs, new infrastructure, more R&D, new companies, new startups. I think it's a wonderful path to go. Plus, we can activate the young workforce, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, because they are purpose-driven more. And going into this transition, I think we have a wonderful opportunity to get even more people in this new area, would be my opinion. But Gianluca, what do you think about it?
No, I completely agree. Unfortunately, I don't remember the the figures, but I was reading something about you need to compare the numbers that Evan said with others. I was reading about how much investment has been done for the solar panel transitions back in the days. And this one is a fraction of what has been invested with a solar panel. So we need to put in perspective what 7, 10, 11 billion are, and the value is just a fraction. And then I confirm what Andrea said. It's really about if this is a strategic industrial opportunity for Europe, money is not going to be a problem. There's plenty of those.
Okay, that's interesting. Because you mentioned security and insecurity or uncertainty. And today what we're seeing rolling out right now is our supply of raw oil for polyester is extremely insecure. So does this mean that reshoring is going to change this? Should we look at this? Is this a solution for us? Or what's your position on the reshoring discussion? Because generally speaking, I always think, I'm making a generalization, but production happens in Asia. Most of the consumption happens in the Western world, whether it's the US or the EU. And so where should we recycle it? Should we be recycling here or over there? And the sorting and recycling happens here, but do we produce then in Europe or do we produce in Asia again? How do we work out this reshoring?
There's a lot
part?
of questions.
Yes.
Well, first and foremost, it is not only about cleaning Europe. I think is the concept of I'm hearing more is remade in Europe is an important one. I used to be the general manager of an Italian company that was producing 90% of the collection in Europe. You have some challenges, but also you have a lot of benefits. In this case, the price of the oil is not a big issue for them because there's a lot of carbon footprint that doesn't depend on that. So the relationship with Asia and the price, I think reassuring is an important piece. We also need to put in perspective also here, no one is expecting or no one should take 100% of the production that they have in Asia and bring it back to Europe. Because companies, they need to adapt, they need to make trial, they do a small test, and then they start working on that. Because if you start reshoring a little bit, you have less dependency on the fluctuation of the cost. You have a shorter lead time. Therefore, your forecast is more accurate. The accuracy of your forecast is much higher. You buy less fabric, and at the end, the overproduction is going to be smaller. So this is the perspective from a brand perspective. At Regio, for example, we really believe that if you want to create a circular system, it has to be localized. We should stop thinking of, we need to take care about our waste. So take our waste, that there is a lot, and there will be even more. I think in the report that Evan was referring before, next week is going to get out. Post-consumer waste, we have tons of that. We are going to be burned around this post-consumer waste. You take that, you regenerate it in Europe, and you make it high-quality product for the European market. So you start decreasing your dependency from Asia. That is a very important piece.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that. I also would say, I mean, this it's in the name, but Rehubs was created with the belief that the best way to get to that 15% that I was referencing is to create regional hubs that have the capabilities together and aligned, operating in the most efficient way, from collection through to sorting, processing, and recycling. So that hypothesis of the most efficient solution is to create these, hub locations that can handle that amount of volume. And it shouldn't be bound by country barriers. It should be regionalized. And I think there's a lot of support for that kind of thinking, regardless of where the industry is going and cost of oil or reshoring. And it goes exactly to the point you're making, which is we need to deal with the waste where it is, and to create a competitive infrastructure that can then be scalable economically. And so I'm a strong advocate for that model, that regionalized model where the infrastructure can be built and scaled most efficiently.
Yes, I think we need to come back. There were times in Europe, I'm a dinosaur perhaps, but there were times we did not do paper recycling and glass recycling. Today we buy glass with recycled content. We buy paper with recycling content. So it's technology workable. So also paper industry had to do that. And of course it makes sense to recycle where it comes. So don't send the 2.7 billion tons around the world, recycle it there. And we need to consider it's the best way, the most efficient way to be closed, closed loop. So let's say region of Europe, there's enough waste. There's a little bit of textile waste and post-consumer waste. The fibers you can send everywhere. We need to consider the whole world production of wool is 1 million ton. 99% is produced in Tasmania, in Australia. It's sent around the world. So cotton coming from America going around. So I think if we go into fiber stage, my background is fiber, so I was working. You can send fiber around the world. Even the value chain is moving, hopefully next to Africa or somewhere, or in another area. But the most efficient is don't send waste around because it's heavy. So if we have the hub theory, recycling, waste, feedstock, production of fibers, with the fibers you can go everywhere. And I think this logic we should do might be also Asia for Asia, Europe for Europe, might be, if CO2 taxes get rightly in the level, then we have more regional supply chain, which makes sense because sending around the world is, of course, also ecologically not efficient. But now it's economically feasible. So we need to be prepared for that CO2 taxes should really reflect what they are. And in that, the regional approach is, the most efficient way.
I think, and we'll get into this too, but just to ground some numbers too, recycled fibers on average today are 2x their virgin counterparts, and 50% of that premium is coming from the feedstock. So if we are talking about, kind of addressing the elephant in the room when it comes to the infrastructure, it's that pain point of the premium, and what's causing the premium is the efficient collecting, sorting, and processing of the feedstock, and we're not there yet. Automation and other technologies that can be done anywhere in the world, and kind of using this theory of regionalized hubs should hopefully help there, but we fundamentally have to address this economic reality that recycled materials are twice as expensive, and that's primarily driven by the collecting and sorting and processing of high quality feedstock.
So is it logistics or is it the processing, and specifically for the feedstocks?
It's both. And you guys can speak to the realities from the recycling point of view, what that does to your, what you want. But I think that there's also this, the one comment I'll make on it, because you guys are more experts on that than me. But I think what I see in the industry too is this first mover's disadvantage, if you want to call it that, right? So on the collection and sorting side, it's very hard to invest in the capabilities to scale there when the offtakes or the commitments from recyclers and brands for the feedstock isn't fully there. But it goes the other way too. It's hard for recyclers, brands buying feedstock to invest when both the quality and the volumes and the price aren't consistent from the collectors and sorters. So, we're kind of in this deadlock where both sides are saying, well, let's get more volumes at higher quality with better levels of, granularity and at a lower cost, and then we'll buy, and that just creates this deadlock. But I think it'd be very valuable to hear the perspectives from you guys.
Yeah, I think we can have a conversation also later about the price, because that's an important piece. I think is when you look at I think the way we see it, always say it, we are not the recyclers, we are not regenerating polyester. In this case, we are helping to build a circular system. And that's in this circular system, there are a lot of players there. And the beauty of this situation where we are right now is that is new, is happening right now. And there's a lot of excitement. But then it requires a lot of people that wants to be pioneer on what they are doing, because there are a lot of inefficiency right now, but knowing where it's going to go, that is where should be the will to invest into it. So the cost is, feedstock is a big part of the composition of the price, because the high inefficiency that there is right now does not mean that it will stay like this. It will change, but it's the collecting and the sorting and the pre-processing is an important piece of the equation that has to develop. But when they do it as long as brand like Re&Up or Reju are going to commit with them to buy feedstock from them at a certain price point. So we need to give them the hope or the perspective that there will be some business to be done. On the other side, then we go downstream and we look for the brands and we talk with the brands, and we need to have the commitment from the brands as well. So as we said before, is building a circular system requires everyone to play his role on it. It's not a matter of one player that can make it happen. And by the way, there is, again, from my brand hat, there is very few brands out there that I'm aware of that are really doing circular practices in their company. They believe they do that, but they don't, because they use bottle to textile, they use post-industrial, they use pre-consumer. That is, everything is better than virgin, but that doesn't close the loop. You can be bottle only once, you can be post-industrial only once, then you're a piece of a garment. So there is also this lack of understanding what closing the loop and circularity is that has to be overcome a little bit.
Yeah, actually, you made a point about that earlier on, about recycling and feedstock. And I remember you saying something about the madness of building the future of our industry on another industry's feedstock. It's like we rely on the health of the soft drinks industry for bottles. And how is that?
Well, again, I've never thought to get excited to talk about chips or polyester and all these things, but that's the truth. Is we are building something, and for me is the notion of taking the waste of relying on the waste of another industry to create product for our industry, and then at the same time not caring or not taking care about our own waste. That was good 30 years ago. I do remember, because I worked for Patagonia for 8 years. 30 years ago, Patagonia moved away from virgin polyester to bottle to textile for the snap tea. That was a revolution at that time, and that was great. But that was almost 30 years ago. Now it's time that these companies, I'm not saying Patagonia, everyone, the industry is moving to the next step, is taking care about our waste. That is important for us, for the future of the business, for the future of our kids. I mean, that goes beyond the business.
Yeah.
But let me add here something, because this industry, I think, is very important. Any questions I also welcome, but I think the recycling industry, it has a different mindset. The recycling industry, they recycle for themselves, for resellable. And therefore, we have this problem with the sort and recyclers, because in the end, fully understand, they can only make money with the resellable, reusable. So it's good. So they make this and that. But what we need here, we need the bottom, the long tail, which they cannot use. And therefore, when we started, we saw that they are having 180, 200 fractions, extremely expensive, because they have so many customers. And this brought us up to the way we have an integrated own sorting line. Because, you cannot change an industry with the mindset of we use only let's say, the cream of the cream, we make money out of that. And I think here we need to also disrupt again this whole system and the whole structure, because if we are integrated, if we know what we want, we don't need 90% of what they do, we cannot use as recyclers, but they need it because they have these clients. And therefore, this transformation of the recycling and sort industry is very, very important. Together, what Gianluca said, and you also, that we need, this needs a change. Because if everybody, like a collector, makes money because he thinks, oh, this to get a high price, and the sorters make money, then what we hear on the study, and it's evident, that, let's say, the main driver is the raw materials, it cannot work because the brands want to have cost neutrality. So here we need another transition of these early mover companies to find a way to bypass that and just focusing really, really, really on the post-consumer. We learned this by having an own integrated version. You bring down the cost dramatically. But you need more partners on that to understand that's the way to go. To make it feasible, everybody has to make a participation on that.
Thank you. And so let's talk about this pricing discussion and the price parity question. How do we move beyond that? Because it is something that we hear regularly from the brands. It's like, oh, I'm really interested in this material. Oh yeah, but it's 10 cents more expensive. I'll just buy the cheap one. So what is going to help us move beyond that discussion about price parity?
Gianluca, before you start, I think we see now with the war, unfortunately, it's terrible, the war. But we see what's now in the oil industry, suddenly prices jump up. So what the argument was before with price is kind of twisted now.
Yep.
But of course, please, Gianluca, you have the pricing.
And again, here I'm always looking with my brand.
Brands are part of the question.
Yeah,
we need to talk about them too.
We should. I think this straight comparison between virgin, bottle, and textile to textile doesn't work. The price structure of a virgin polyester is different than the price structure of a textile to textile recycled PT. Virgin is relying heavily on the oil price, versus textile to textile recycled polyester has different components that goes. What we discussed before is the cost of collecting, sorting, pre-processing. We need to build infrastructures. There is the return of investment that is required by private investors. All of this is building the price of textile to textile recycled PT, where feedstock still has a very big portion of that. And this is one piece. The second is there is no such a thing for the recycled PT. There is no such a thing as price parity. I say it straight, you can't forget it for the years to come, because that's two different things. It's different source, different way of producing it, a different purpose. So there will be in the years to come an automatization. Let's say the process will become more better, more efficient. So as for bottle to textile, the price is going to decrease, but the price parity with virgin, it will never probably happen. So with that being said, how do you want to look at it? I think we should start looking at it from the point of the cost of not doing nothing, of doing nothing. So the cost of doing nothing. So from different dimensions. So do you want to become more independent from the fluctuations that is coming from Asia? I spoke with a couple of friends here in these days. Now you want to buy material, fabric, yarn. They don't have even the price anymore because they don't know. So you need to negotiate a plus, minus 20, 30%. And pray to God that is going to be not plus 30%. So that is a piece. So if you want to become more resilient as an organization, I think that is important that you start considering European-made second raw material. Then the legislation is coming. That's not going to fade away. And regardless if you're a small or big company, you need to start acting now. Because if you wait the day that the country is going to take the European directive and put it in place, it's too late. It takes a lot of time. So price is much more complex than a linear benchmark between them.
Yeah, before we jump into the legislation side, I like your image of it's not the same product. Why would you ask chocolate and bananas to be the same price? It is called PET, it's the same molecule, but the process is so different to make it that expecting price parity doesn't make any sense.
And then I let you, because that is also the communication piece. There are some values that has to be shared as well. So if you want to just make money, you are an ultra fashion company, that's your goal, that's, well, keep going what you're doing. But if you have certain values, you want to build a business that is more responsible. And responsibility means be aware of the damage that you do. I think textile to textile recycled polyester can help you that. And the consumer and the young generations are really looking into it.
Evan, you had
I mean, I do think it's good for us all here at this conference to align on this idea that price parity and getting to price parity is, not a relevant, or let's say not the most important way to look at the challenge. It is, I completely agree, it's a different product, it's a different value chain, and it is fundamentally solving a different problem. And it needs to be looked at that way to get to the tipping point and to kind of break this supply-demand deadlock that we've been talking about. Can happen. It will require the billions that I mentioned of capex and opex, but that has nothing to do then with whether it's what price the material is on the back end. That system can scale with this I would large sum of invested capital, but it can scale and serve the need of customers who are buying that material, and again have nothing to do with a comparison to virgin. So I fully support that narrative and that goal, and just that kind of mind shift for all of us to have, that price parity isn't and shouldn't be the goal.
Yeah, Andreas.
Yeah, but here I think I fully agree with all of that, but the other part is also here coming again with legislations. If we get the ESPR and EPR, that, let's say, assuming I'm not in Brussels, but if a garment has 15%, I mean, every product in the sold in the European Union has to have an EPR fee. Assuming, let's say, just say per kilo, let's assume €1 is better. Let's just average between all the countries. And if you have to pay the fees, and the large brands have to pay, I don't know, between 80 million and 120 or 350 million per year EPR fees. The only exception is you have 15% recycled material. This will move, because then we don't talk about product price, we talk about strategic price. And I think that's the leverage of the European Union and the legislation, why it's so important. What I said before, it's an enabling. Because if you then have, 2 T-shirts and 100%, let's say, virgin, and the other one with recycled content, in the end, okay, the products cost, this is cheaper. But due to the EPR fees, the corporate suddenly says, oh, even the recycling is cheaper. So let's go that way. And I think that's something which is important and should support. It should not be the only one. I think technology-wise, like in all technologies, the first electrical cars, I remember I live in Salzburg, Mr. Porsche was running the Geisberg race 1920 with electro car. Of course, it was a nightmare. He was fast, but he could not rebuild it. When Tesla started, the first cars did also not really move well. Now we have electric cars everywhere. That's the thing of disruptive innovation and innovation development. So it needs brains, food, money in this food, injection of a lot of creativity, money, and others to move forward. But I think, so we will come down a little bit on price, like everywhere, scale and that. We have a scale effect. But enabling with the EPR fees, the brands get immediately change, and all of brands are here. And this will help then to make the transition. Then we talk not about product to product price, we talk about corporate fees. And I think then we have another discussion. The volatility which is happening now with the crude oil is an indicator. The future is not predictable, but we assume, due to long-term thinking, there will be more disruption coming, like, geopolitical, you have another president in the US, you have another president there. And to be prepared as a brand side, it's always good to go the secure way. And if you're based in Europe and you comply to the European legislation, it would be for the recycling a huge, huge, huge benefit if EPR gets embedded. Hope I was clear, but I think that's very important to understand. It's not price to price, it's more the legislation support.
So brands should be looking at the final price, production price or production cost plus the EPR fee to make those decisions.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we all know, I mean, from working in or with brands, like generally looking at that end to end from a raw material through a product through the end of life is not a standard accounting practice within a brand. They don't even usually account for it after it's produced in a store or not. You know, it can just disappear from the books, so to say, from an account. You know, so truly looking end to end at the full cost is kind of a new standard or a new way of thinking about the economics, but will be needed because Andreas is absolutely right. The EPR side will definitely shift. You know, how brands will and should look at the economics of how they produce what they produce.
Yeah, and as a reminder, EPR is extended producer responsibility. It really is about making the producer think further than I've sold it, it's out of my hands, I can't do anything about it. So is there anything else that you wanted to add? What do we need to, how do we create that supply chain in Europe? Is it collaboration? Is it numbers? Is it everything that we've mentioned? Is there one thing that is key?
I mean, I'll start because it's kind of where I also some of the first thing I said. You know, within Rehubs, as an aligning and convening organization for the industry under this mandate of building the infrastructure for T2T in Europe, one of the fundamental things that we think needs to happen in as quick as it can, so in the next 2 years, is a better baseline of data around capacities, volumes, infrastructure today. You know, at breaking it down at the facility level. You know, we're talking about sorting and processing, which was the theme of this discussion. You know, you're having to look through 40, 50 different granular segments of sorting and processing of materials, you know, by, again, 40 plus different ways to slice and dice that data and what's actually happening if you go visit a sorting facility. And the level of data that we have today to really understand what's coming in, where is it going, where is their capacity, where is their bottlenecks, that level of granularity doesn't exist. So one of the priorities that Rehubs has put forward to the industry and its members and stakeholders is how can we get to a better level of data granularity of the current state so we can better assess where the infrastructure needs to go.
Thank you. So that's the Rehub's position. Andreas, we mentioned Rehub, but there's also the T2T Alliance. What is the position of that organization on this?
I think all organizations are not alliances now. I think first we need all to align that we have one voice concerning the policymakers. Let's say that's very important because if they get 100 voices, they get irritated. I think a voice to the policymakers that the real industry, we have one or two over here, have a kind of a demand that they can say where is the bottleneck. And it is the support that the extended producer responsibility EPR is implemented, that under ESPR, the design regulations need a minimum percentage of recycled content. That's enables. I think that's very important. I would say overall, what we always say, collaboration is key. Like what we do here, we on the one side, we not you, but we are competitors, but we are working together. I mean, you know, we are all compliant, but collaboration is here the only thing which brings us together because it's a young industry, recycling. So that we have one voice. And in the T2T Alliance, I was the creator of that because I thought let's bring an umbrella under the textile to textile recycling fiber producers. Reju has also made something because we thought we need to think bigger than just ourselves. So collaboration is key. Go to the policymakers, talk to them what is reality. They ask for that. And build alliances, regional alliances, to work together. And Rehubs is very important because they have a European view, which we cannot have because we are corporations we need to run for ourselves to make, first of all, brands very much aware that transition happens, that in brands there are some pioneering people that want to run there, so that we have enough support them. And then on the next level to scale, to keep the made with Europe, made in Europe, made the European region, prefer to import waste from China. I think we need to work on that, because if things go faster, we will be flooded with Asian textile waste, and the 2.7 billion will stay. So what we do, incineration. I don't have to calculate. 2.7 billion is 3.5 billion CO2 emission tons. I mean, we cannot have that. I think we need to avoid, clean up Europe, no incineration, no landfill, and this is the only way we can work together.
Just before I jump to Gianluca, you mentioned importing waste from China.
Yes. Well, it's very easy. If we talk about brands, they say, oh, I need textile to textile. So we buy the garments and we just give in the spec textile to textile. And there is, they don't care about where the waste is coming from. So you import with the garment, waste transferred in the original country where it's produced from this country. So we get more garments with waste outside of Europe into Europe, instead of saying waste from Europe should have a preferred status.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know. I mean, we are discussing with the legislation how this works, but it should have a value that European produced with Europe waste should have a benefit. Otherwise, it will not work long term due to price pressure.
I think it does. If you look at the French EPR, which is the most established one, they when you get an eco subsidy from the French EPR, it's only valid if you use recycled material coming from their list of suppliers, their list of vetted suppliers that use waste from Europe. So it is actually happening.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
I think France is anyway the strongest country, faster, earlier than anybody else. I think that's always a good example. But we need the other member states to adopt to that. Because if we could use the French, let's say, as a blueprint, I think it's the right way to do.
It is very interesting, yeah. Gianluca, anything you want to add?
Well, I confirm 100%. For Regio, it's important that, and we are advocating for the recycled materials to come, at least part of that from Europe. Otherwise, we cannot break that link between Asia and Europe. So the European recycled material made for Europe is extremely important. For me, the word is, as they said, is collaboration. I think it's important to have the information. It's important to have a source of truth that everyone is looking at, because otherwise we spend too much time trying to find the one version of the truth, and that's where we stuck there and we don't progress. Collaboration is extremely important in the upstream part, regulations part, and then I always look at the downstream part. I find that we have an obligation as industry also to help the business to get more informed and educated. In my conversations, I'm always encouraging the brands to really spend a little time in understanding the difference between mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, the different feedstock that is needed for the two of them, the different output that you get if you go through mechanical and chemical recycling, and the different price that there is in that. And what impact there is on the LCA of each of the technologies, because there is no one that is better than another. It really depends on what a brand or what a business is aiming for. I feel like there is a lot of time is business, and I'm saying brands, they don't know what they don't know, and they are not able yet to make educated questions and educated choices. So they tend to believe to the most convenient answer that they get from wherever. And that is creating a lot of distraction right now. I think there is a lot of rumors on the background that we need to add cleaning. And today we started with price parity with Virgin is not a thing. But there are much more of this. There is a gap between reality and storytelling that we need to close that gap.
Okay. So if I were to sum up two words or two expressions, one is price parity. We shouldn't be looking for that, and the other one is really collaboration, having a unique voice and collaborating. Thank you. Before you leave, do we have any questions from the audience? I believe Elena has a microphone somewhere. If you do have a question, where's Elena? Oh, thank you, Andreas.
Hi, thanks so much for the talk. I just had a question, again, with the global aspect of this issue, which is that it is my understanding that most garments are made in Asia, especially highly technical ones. So how do you see the local regionalization of textile recycling playing in with the fact that Asia, especially, has all this knowledge, expertise, the scale to produce garments? My concern is that it would just take a really long time for Europe to get to that level of production, and that we need answers faster. Yeah.
It's a good question. I can just jump in. And Andreas, you mentioned it earlier. Shipping waste is more challenging and costly than shipping a raw material or a component of a raw material. So building the regional infrastructure, or even just the continental infrastructure in Europe to deal with Europe's waste problem, or that for that matter in any country that's consuming a lot of textiles, it makes a lot of sense to have those capabilities within or close to where they're collecting, the waste is being essentially created and then collected, sorted. Because, to Andrea's point previously, and he can elaborate, but the cost then of shipping the output of that to manufacture, where the infrastructure for manufacturing exists, that definitely makes a lot of sense, and that's can still happen in this model.
My understanding is that there are two sides to that question. One is about waste. Shipping waste is a headache. It's waste. It can be toxic waste. There are restrictions for shipping waste from the EU. There are restrictions for shipping waste to China. So we should treat it here and make it into a raw material that has value. Once you're there, shipping it is not a problem. Think about a modern container ship. You can put 4,000 containers on it. In one 20-foot container, you can put several 100,000 t-shirts. So divide or multiply 100,000 t-shirts times 4,000, and then divide that by the oil consumption for the shipping. It's nothing when you bring it back to the t-shirt. So it makes more sense to treat it here, create the added value, because if we create the added value, we keep the value in this region and we create the jobs. We can still work with the experienced manufacturers that are in Asia. But you could also think of it potentially as a slower process of retooling and retraining and bringing some manufacturing back here. But the cost is going to be different. So that also needs to be taken into account.
And this is already a reality. And among this audience, I've just seen that there is a couple of companies that are already doing that. You can. The idea is not to take 100% of your production and move it back to Europe. It won't be possible. But 20 plus years ago in Europe, we were producing in Romania, we were producing in Moldova, so the know-how still exists. So it's just reassuring is part of your collection. And probably you need that then you go into more of the product development piece. Maybe you take the commodity part of the collection, you keep it in Asia, you have a more premium collection, you make it in Europe, and then you take second raw material made in Europe, and then you speak with you build a market, a communication story. You are communicating why you're doing it in Europe, but you have also a different price. So I think you have to look at it from a really go-to-market strategy, from the raw material until you go to the market with your product.
Thank you. I think the microphone's out there somewhere. Yeah.
Hi. You actually answered kind of my question, but I think it's important to highlight the global aspect of this challenge. As you mentioned, I think it's quite, to be like frank, like to think that we can move a lot of the production to Europe is maybe not really the reality. Like, of course, I really believe that we should invest in Europe and like do the most we can. But of course, the reality is that a lot of production is still in Asia. So I think you answered also my question that, of course, how to handle the waste here. We really need to find a way to make it into a raw material that we still can ship and spin in Asia, because to move all the spinning here would mean that we need to invest in heavily in infrastructure to create energy here, and that would be super expensive. So I think the global aspect of creating an ecosystem around waste, and also understand that the capabilities that are in Asia will still be very key for this. I think it's important to highlight in this conversation.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, Andreas, Evan, Gianluca, do you want to share, do you have a booth? Where can people catch up with your organization, your brand? Gianluca, I believe you have a booth on the show.
Yes, it's in C2. Somewhere in C2, we have popcorns, we have coffee. And if you want to have some information, not only about Reju, but what I was saying before, we can also sit having a coffee, eating some popcorns, and talking about the difference between mechanical, chemical, everything that I said before. So if you want to stop by for a chat and a coffee, we are more than happy to welcome you there. C2.
Evan?
For Rehubs, I'm just here today. But please, if you're interested in Rehubs as an organization, learning more about how you can contribute to this alliance, then please reach out. As I said, we have a new report that we've done in partnership with some great organizations that will be coming out next week. So keep an eye out for that. Go to the Rehubs website, email us, and we can talk.
Andreas?
Well, we don't have a booth here. Like I'm here around here the whole day. I will stay here around this panel anytime. Very happy to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. You don't have popcorn.
No popcorns, no coffee, but the coffee is free. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today.